The Empirical Energy Podcast blows open the silent revolution, rewriting the rules of global energy markets. Measured, verified energy is no longer an alternative. It's becoming the gold standard. We dive deep with the producers, traders, consultants, and renegades driving this seismic shift. Step inside the raw mechanics of how verification and blockchain-fueled trading are dismantling the old systems and creating a future where alternative energy doesn't just compete, it takes over. This is the movement of reshaping energy as we know it, bold, unstoppable, and just getting started. Here is your host, Mark Smith.
So you're telling me about the Toyota packages.
Yeah, so, the packages came out with, in 2024, basically they paid you out for a substantial period of time. That coupled with your pension plan, I thought I was going to fade out into the sunset and just retire. But what happened, to my surprise, was people started, reaching out to me out of the woodwork, asking me to do consulting, being a strategic advisor. I actually served on a board for a period of time there. Over a year.
Were these people that you knew, when you were at Toyota, or just?
Yes, it's a mixture of both. It's people that, knew me while I was at Toyota, as well as people that knew of me from, my work at Toyota and, what I did in the industry and so on. So it was a kind of mixture of both. And it was surprising because, like I said, after I left Toyota, I thought, I was kind of going to retire and just, do whatever I want to do, and it turned into something else. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, and it's keeping me very busy, and I'm really enjoying it.
So who is like the ideal client, and what is the value that you're bringing them?
Yeah, so the ideal client, there is really no such thing as an ideal client. What there is clients that have needs, right? And clients that have needs, and they're various, and they're looking for people that have various experience. Now, there's two types of consultants out there. There's people that say they're consultants. They're the ones that the old line, they'll take the wrist watch off your hand and tell you what time it is, right? And then there's consultants that actually have an extensive amount of experience and basically have done everything and can speak to a subject or a topic based on experience and based on, problems that they had to solve and so on, right? And I tend to fall in that latter category. And these are people that people are seeking out. They want people that have experience because a lot of the new technology and everything else is basically how can we apply this new technology to processes that we have and problems that have been facing in the past, and it goes on and on. In other words, it could be stated like, in the early days, a lot of the focus with technology and such has been on management productivity.
Yeah.
Now with the new AI tools and what have you, it's more focused on operational productivity. And operational productivity is what is going to yield you the biggest gains.
All right. So walk me through kind of the problem, so a client comes to you, hey, I got this problem, and you're listening to it. And of course they explain to you, okay, if I don't solve this problem, this bad thing will happen. But I think if I can figure this out, this good outcome will happen. And kind of what sort of solution are you recommending these days? And, I'd love to especially hear about the, any kind of AI solution that you're doing or whatever, if you're actually, well, I'll just tell you one thing, just a little, so you know where I'm coming from. I kept I'm the old guy, right? So I used to be, I hate doing the old stories about how I used to be somebody, like I used to program, I used to program with the best of them or systems analysts, right? And I kept along the years, and I was an IT guy for, 25 years. Then I started a magazine called Windows NT Magazine, and that became a big deal. And then I became, consulting mostly to media business owners, okay? Until I started this company I have now, which is Clean Connect, an AI software company for oil and gas, using it as computer vision, AI. And now I find myself with this vibe coding world, cloud code and whatnot. I'm back, baby. It's beautiful. I don't need to know all the, I didn't need to learn Python or any of this stuff. I just literally listen to what the customers want, and I'm able to show them something. They're like, wow, that looks like exactly what I'm looking for. And then I have some back end guys that can take it into, enterprise level production. But still, I feel like, hey, I'm back. I don't have to be the guy that just hands it off to my, designer or whatever. I can literally get it. And I could imagine at some point, vibe coding will just go right like all the way. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything that you said so far. And I've been experiencing the same thing. And what I'm seeing, and this is kind of an evolution, and you hear, everybody talk about what AI is going to do to the world and how it's going to change. And then there's some skeptics out there that say it's in a bubble, it's not really doing anything. But you and I, being on the forefront of this area, we know that what used to take 2 years to develop and execute can be done in a week or less, right? So what that means is businesses can respond to issues much quicker than they could ever in the history of mankind. And that's why everybody's getting so excited about it. Now, the problem is a lot of people that are in these positions are young. They don't understand the how things work. They're relying on existing legacy IT systems that have the logic built into them. They have the rules engines built into them. And they're like, I'd like to build this, but I don't understand our business, right? So
Mm.
that's why they need people like us to say, hey, let's go into the legacy software. Let's pull out your rules engine that, we're developed over 40 years or whatever that tell you how your business is actually running, right? And let's go out and solve these problems using the technology that you have, but applying it in a new way. And it's going to be quicker, cheaper, better quality than you've ever seen before.
And Mark, look, and we got a few, miles on the tread, right? So I think one of the other advantages that we have as being the older guys in the room is this. Okay, so my younger business partner, they're racking their brain to try to figure out what to do next. Okay, that is the what. And I immediately, I jump to the who because, we've been around long enough and our network is big and we kind of like, wait a second. I know a guy that could probably get me, way further down the road. And so I find myself like when I'm cloud coding and doing research, I could say, hey, go find all the oil and gas producers and LNG, whatever, in New Mexico, right? And which certifications they're looking for. And it goes off and done it. And then I say, wait a second, I know this energy trader and this energy trader, and I plug those things in. I was, oh my gosh, okay, this guy is involved with this and this. So we can feed it the who and the what, and that could actually accelerate the project even faster because you start involving your network in something, and your network's always looking, especially if you've been a good partner in the past, right? To where when you call, they're like, no, I'm going to return Mark's call because I've done business with him in the past. And, he's a guy that gets results and he's got, he's good with the relationship side. And they come into your world and then it just compounds the thing, I think. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. I don't know about you, but I feel like us old guys have the who as well as the what in our brains.
And so what you just said, and I was listening to the example that you were providing. What you were saying is based on your contacts, you have access to better data.
Right.
As you know, when you improve your data quality, you get better results.
Right.
And that is an advantage that experienced people have over people that are brand new. It's like you can improve the data quality, which is foundational in anything you do. It's always been that way since the beginning of IT. And now it's more important now than ever because a lot of these AI tools are just combing the internet. And as you know, for their data, right? They're combing the internet for their data, and you're only as good as the data that you're getting, right?
Mhm.
There's no one there being a data steward to say this is good data, this is bad data. It just takes whatever data that's out there, gives you an answer. That's why you still need someone to review that. Otherwise, the term hallucinations are out there all the time. AI is going to give you hallucinations, right? That's all caused by bad data. And what you and people like you and people that are experienced, like myself and you, you're going to get to people that'll give you the best data available. And that will also yield you the best results. And then you can use the same tool, you'll get two different results. What's the difference? The data, right?
Yep. So, okay. So, Mark, sorry, I interrupted you with my whole backstory. Sorry. But, you know, just go back to, okay, so I don't know if you can mention names at all, but a scenario like, okay, this company came to you, they had this problem, they kind of told you what the ramifications of that problem were, and their hope that if it's fixed, it would do, and then kind of walk me through a solution and what you might recommend to them.
Usually they want to, a lot of the conversations lately have been, we have questions and we need answers, right?
Okay.
We have been doing our own research and we need to verify if it's accurate or not, or if there's any, errors in the data, if you will, right? They sometimes they'll come up with a problem that needs to be solved. Sometimes they'll have their own idea and want you to basically pressure test it to see if it's flawed in any ways. So I'm being careful in how I present this because I do sign a lot of non-disclosure agreements.
Okay. All right.
Can't name companies and
Yeah.
but their situations are like as it applies to consultations that I've done as it applies to energy, it basically there are, for example, like when we're talking about hydrogen fuel, right? And hydrogen fuel cells.
Was that your expertise at Toyota?
No, but I spent a lot of time researching, developing, being involved in it. I was involved in a portion, like the launch of the hydrogen fuel cell, the Mirai, back in, 2014, 2015. So yes, I have done some work at Toyota with the fuel cell, but I wouldn't say that's my expertise at Toyota, right? My expertise basically evolved by an interest in that area after I left Toyota, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of study, and becoming an expert in say that area, right? But so I do have some knowledge, but then I built on that knowledge to learn other things, right? But for example, a lot of people, when you talk about hydrogen fuel cells, they don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Right.
And they don't understand that even if you talk about just the hydrogen itself, they don't know what does that mean? Where does it come from? Is there different grades of hydrogen? You hear terms like blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, gray hydrogen, so on. But nobody really knows what those are, right? And why are they important, right? And so I spent a lot of time explaining that the hydrogen is just a fuel source to power basically an electrical generator called a fuel cell. And depending on the type of engineering that goes into that fuel cell, it can accept various hydrogen as long as it's a certain standard purification. And then there's also things like regulators and software and ECUs that have to be configured to make sure that they all run together perfectly. It's not plug and play. There's a lot of companies out there that think, oh, I'll just buy some components, put it together. Oh, I got a fuel cell. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So I do a lot of things like that. Sometimes it's operational improvement. A lot of companies are trying to understand, different ways of doing the same thing, whether it's like forecasting their sales. How do they do it in the automotive world? How do we do it in commercial world? How do we do it in some other type of world, right? And how can we apply it to a different industry? Can we use the same techniques that you use in automotive and apply it to forecast our demand for some other product in another industry? So I do a lot of consulting like that. It's all it's not one customer, it's based on a need that a customer has, and then they go find the best subject matter experts, if you will, that can provide some consulting, and that's where you lend value.
So do they ask you too about the IRS 45V credits, for clean hydrogen and how to get them and that kind of stuff?
If they did, I'm not an expert in that.
Okay.
So I would decline because I don't know. I'd have to study up on that, right?
Well,
I'm
if
not
you
an
ever
expert in
if you ever
everything.
get asked about that, I know a guy. who knows
Yes.
all about 45V and what energy you can use to produce the hydrogen to get it and how you create the credits and how you sell them. There's an entire industry around the 45 credits and how you sell them, and there are actually attorneys and stuff who will package them up and sell them to people who need the credits and things like that. There's an ecosystem around that. So that might
Yeah.
be something to
I,
add to your knowledge
I am
base.
aware of that. I am
Yeah.
aware of that. And I do know that there's many, many people that are experts like yourself that are not me that specialize in that. So thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of hydrogen fuel cells, so where do you think that the play is in terms of, okay, I mean, the things that my customers are all, energy producers, right? So upstream coming up from the ground and then midstream, downstream, whatnot. And now, LNG increasing and then AI data centers. Okay. So then the creativity comes around there where we have partners who will say, okay, this company, I won't mention a name, they want a pile of, energy for their AI data center, but they want it net zero if they can get it. Why? Because they've been buying carbon credits in the past, trees and whatnot. Now they're like, okay, that could be perceived, especially in Europe, as greenwashing. So the actual energy needs to be consumed. All right. So they were like, how do we get that? Well, you have RNG, renewable natural gas, which gives this minus CI score. And then you have an empirically measured natural gas, and you blend that and you put that in there. Okay. That's one scenario with this blending thing. But where does hydrogen? Could hydrogen fuel cells play somewhere in the AI data center ecosystem?
You want my personal opinion of that?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
what you're asking? So my personal opinion is, right now there is a reason why the adoption of the hydrogen fuel cells in automotives is going backwards, right? And it's going backwards because the cost of the hydrogen fuel keeps increasing. It's been the case in the United States. I know back in the early days when I was involved in the launch of the Mirai, you could buy, a kilogram of hydrogen for about $16 a kilogram. Now it's over twice that much. It's
Hmm.
like $2 a kilogram. So once again,
What happened?
well, there's a lot of problems in the distribution. I mean, even though the United States is one of the lowest cost provider of hydrogen, hydrogen needs to be transported to, an area where it can be compressed and it can be compiled into a network that can put it into cars. And that whole technology and that whole network has not materialized.
Hmm.
So it's all in the distribution of the hydrogen where the costs keep increasing. And it's with the stations, the reliability of the equipment, the compression, the amount of energy needed to compress the hydrogen and stuff like that adds to the cost. And that addition is much higher now than it was, say, in 2015. Now, the dream back then was all of those costs were going to come down. So the cost of a kilogram of hydrogen would be very low, and that would drive the adoption rate of fuel cells. The opposite happened, right?
Hmm.
So most of the hydrogen is derived through natural gas reformation. It's still the cheapest way to do it. But
Hmm.
once again, the difficulty is, shipping it to an area that can compress it, can put it in a station to get it to the right purity to put in a car. That's where all the cost is. So until they solve those problems, it's not really a legitimate option, right? So I had to go through that explanation to say this. No, I don't think it's a good option for data centers, right? Until they can figure out a way to get the cost of producing and distributing the hydrogen below that of natural gas or any other conventional, fossil fuel product to generate electricity.
So where is the use for like hydrogen fuel cells? Like where do you see the opportunity for hydrogen in general and hydrogen fuel cells? Is there
Well,
one?
well, like I said, I meant when you look at the technology of the future, they say, well, it's already invented today, right? And it is. One of the hydrogen fuel cell is an energy for the future. But once again, it's not a viable energy for the future until you get the cost of the hydrogen down,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So when you tell me when you can produce hydrogen at the source to get into a vehicle, from where it is now, $32 in California down to about $4, right? Or less, who knows where it can go, how low it can go, right? I can't give you an answer. Nobody can, right? And that's the hard part. That is the problem to be solved, right? But like I said, the energy of the future is already here. We know that 71% of the universe is hydrogen. It's the most abundant element in the universe. But getting it packaged and being able to use it in any form at a price that makes it the fuel of choice and drives everything else is very difficult. And that's the reason why you don't see, even though we know it's zero emissions, it's the greenest fuel around, right? We know that today. We just can't deliver it.
Right. And it requires an enormous amount of electricity at a time when electricity demand is going through the roof.
We find a way to do it a different way.
Yeah.
That's where the innovation is, right?
Because right now it's like you have enough demand on the electrical grid, and now all the AI data center companies are heading to Washington, D.C. today, I guess, to say, hey, we're making a commitment that we're going to, generate our own power. Like with Colossus 2, and Elon developed he bought a gas processing plant and then bought all these gas turbines from Europe and set them up. And so he has his own gigawatt energy plant on site, and he, controls it, right? Well, he took matters in his own hand. And he did it quick,
Yeah.
So I think all the other data centers are looking at that going, okay, well, that's the way to do it. I can buy a gas processing plant and, set up my own electrical generation right on site. So, but he's got the ability to raise capital like no other human right now.
Yeah, and I think Amazon is going a different route with nuclear, right? And Google too.
But that nuclear is a well to spin up, I think, I mean, to the
But once
level of,
again, they're using different sources of their generation to
sure.
generate power for their data centers.
Yeah, but it's somewhat of a race, how quickly can they?
Quickly they can do it, how cheaply they can do it, because cost matters. And cost is really the driver. It's like whoever can do it in the quickest, least expensive way wins.
Yeah. All right. Well, so are there any other examples so is that what mostly people are asking you to do, is the whole, consulting around hydrogen fuel cells, or is there other stuff that you?
No. If you had like percentages, hydrogen is like the lowest.
So is there anybody where they come to you? I'm like, look, it's super valuable for you to at least help them eliminate options quickly before they, spend too many cycles going down a road,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Has there been any scenarios where they come out where you went, actually, that's not a bad, like, okay, if you're willing to put this much time and effort and money into it, this scenario actually does work. Are there any that you could talk about that do work, or for today?
Yeah.
Or
So quite honestly, most of my work in consulting is based on my operational performance improvement area.
Oh, okay.
That's really my specialty. Now, you can apply that to energy. You can apply it to these other fields, and that's kind of what I do. But I'm not an energy expert. I'm not I wouldn't say that I'm an energy expert. I wouldn't say that at all. But what I do is if you put me in charge of a project to say, hey, what can we do to reduce the cost of generating electricity? That's where I kick in, right? That's where I look at the as is, how things are done now. And then I look at, can we do to get those operational improvements to bring costs down, efficiency up, make it quicker, faster, better, that type of thing. That's kind of my specialty.
Well, when you see, like the YouTube videos and they got a big splash screen says, hey, how to spin up 11, AI agents to replace your employees. What do you think about that stuff? Because it might be a video, for example, about Claude Code's plugins or skills or, that kind of thing. Do you think it's going to have that level of impact? I mean, we can discuss that because I can tell you what I think. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I can use an example like Palmer Luckey made a comment that, you know, thanks to AI, a Ford F-150 truck will cost about, $1,000 in the future, right? And it makes headlines. It's printed everywhere. It's repeated. Oh yeah, AI is going to change the world. And people think that's going to happen like next year. And yeah, you laugh, I laugh. People that don't laugh, but this is what's printed in the headlines, and people read that, and people that don't know how things are made or manufactured or whatever, there's statements that are made like, "Oh, see that office building there with all those people, and they're all collecting data and putting in spreadsheets. AI is going to wipe it all out, right? All those people in that building, boom, thrown away. It's not going to happen tomorrow, right? Maybe in 30 years." Maybe in 20 years, I don't know. But maybe sometime in the future, yes, right? It can be used as a operational process improvement tool to eliminate jobs. The stuff that was done manually, we can now use computers, right? And agents and so on. But, these statements are just, somebody just throwing them out there with no basis of reality. Now, when you think of like Palmer Luckey's comment, how does he know what the cost of the raw materials are going to be in the future? Right? The cost of the raw materials that go into a Ford F-150, $1,000. They're just going to pay less than that for the raw materials and somehow magically put them together for $1,000 and still have a profit margin in there. I mean, it's just a statement that, when I hear that, I'm like, makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I've seen dramatic, in a vehicle is, what Elon's doing with like the robotaxi. Okay. Now you have this unibody thing that eliminates hundreds of parts that need to be connected. And then you eliminate the need for a steering wheel and like everything, like all the human interface is gone. And you say, all right, now I can stamp these things out for who knows, less than 30 grand. And it has no driver, right? So now you've eliminated that part, and and which little by little. So that is a dramatic change to the manufacturing, the way it works. Like it's a sea change, And I don't see anybody else doing that level of work. Maybe China is doing with BYD, similar kind of a thing, but that's about it. Those are a dramatic change, and the entire business model is different, right? You just say. And I think it's good for the time because a lot of young people, I mean, I don't know about you, but man, the second my 16th birthday hit, I wanted my license. Now I go to my nieces and nephews and who are 17. Hey, you got a license? Nah, I don't need that. Or like, then I've got to get a car and it's really expensive and I got to get insurance. And they would be much happier just clicking a button, having a robo-taxi pick them up, take them where they need to go, and don't worry about parking. Don't worry about insurance. Don't worry about anything. And all their entertainment, it just like they could be listening to a song and they get in the vehicle and it just picks up right where they left off with zero. Like it actually works, all the infotainment. And they're not dealing with the guy who's playing music or, trying to get the smell out of it or whatever. So that's pretty dramatic. But short of that, yeah, when I hear someone like Ford going, yeah, I'll get it to $1,000. I'm like, no, I'm not in. Like, I think never. Yeah, I mean, but what I do think, and what we have seen in our own biz, is even from the very first customer, said, "Hey, I've got these human gate guards. They just stand at the gate with a clipboard and, check people in and out. And I need to replace all that." So 6 weeks later, we had a camera system and that would recognize vehicles and license plate and that was done, like 45 gone, right? And then, on and on, where we're seeing lots of mergers happen. And you know how that happens? Big company announces the synergy savings, and that means 20% layoffs, whatever. And our cameras then we get the call, and our cameras are being rolled out everywhere to be essentially virtual operators who are getting smarter and smarter and smarter, right? And it's allowing that AI control room operator. So our software is the AI control room software for like Exxon and Chevron and those big companies. And so this one guy can manage hundreds and hundreds of facilities and the AI says, "Oh, pay attention to this thing." He looks at it, diagnoses it, and fixes it remotely. So
Mhm.
no guys are getting in trucks and driving out, which is the number one safety for oil and gas, is putting a guy in a truck and sending him out to the field. That's
Yep.
where all, like, the majority of safety is not on site, like you see in Landman where something blows up. It's actually the dude driving back and forth to the
Yeah,
site.
and keep in mind, from my previous experience at Toyota Fleet, we used to sell a lot of vehicles to do that type of work,
Yeah,
right? To those, companies, the oil service industries that would send those trucks out there and carry people out there and so on. So
yeah.
it is going to affect other industries as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So, but, and then when they do send them out, the last thing the field guy wants to do is go, wait, okay, some alert went off somewhere on the site. They're playing hide and seek with some leak, versus having a video sent to them by the control room operator saying that part, the pressure relief valve here on tank number 3 is stuck open. Climb up there and unstick it and leave like that, and make sure it's working,
Yeah.
versus somewhere something is broken. Like, oh, brother,
Mhm.
like, how am I gonna,
Yeah. Look at
needle
the
in a
time
haystack?
savings. Yeah.
Yeah, huge. So, all right, well, that's interesting. Well, hey, I'm glad, us old dogs can, be still relevant in this new world. I feel more empowered than ever with some of these tools. And it is kind of cool when I'm the one showing the young dudes how it all works.
Absolutely. It's a great feeling, isn't it?
It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. Well, anyway, hey, Mark, I appreciate the time, and I'm actually just gonna use this video actually, and just, have my people edit it and, talk about your consulting stuff. But so I would like if you could send me like all your contact info and, like, what LinkedIn and, all the your website and all the things.
You're gonna make me improve my LinkedIn now, right? Because most of the
Apparently,
time,
yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
I'm just
get
updating.
AI to do it, man. I mean,
Well,
just go to Claude Code and just say,
I
hey,
would, but
yeah,
but as you know, one of the problems with AI is you still got to put your eyes on it because it makes mistakes, right?
right, 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 right. But anyway, yeah,
And we're not there yet. We're not there yet where we can just touch it and go, and
I know. But at least it
but
gets you further down the road.
that's true.
Yeah,
And it is a time saver.
yeah, it is. All right, well, Mark, appreciate it. And like I
Well,
said,
let
yeah,
me,
if you could send me all your
yeah,
stuff and
yeah.
kind
And
of your ideal,
if there's anything else, any other topics or whatever that you'd like to talk about,
yeah.
or different approaches, how would the automobile industry approach this problem? That's where
We
I'm
have been
picking
asked
up
actually a few
value.
times. People have come to us from the automotive industry, and they're saying, "Hey, I have a use, I think, for your computer vision cameras, especially the gas one." And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Really, gas at in manufacturing?" And they say, "Yeah, well, we actually have some regs around certain gases that are part of the process."
Yeah.
And they want to know what our, OGI, the optical gas instrument camera, sees and how that would work. And I explain. And so, but we haven't done anything there. We've been
Yeah.
hands, it
Just
really,
off the top of my head, it's like, automobile manufacturers, have to charge the vehicle with Freon, the R134 Freon to, power your AC. If there's a leak in the system somewhere, it'd be nice, hey, why is the Freon leaking out of this all the time, right? And where is
yeah,
it?
right. Yeah, to
So,
be able to just put a
you know,
IR camera and see it. Yeah.
like I said, anywhere, and if you already developed it in your industry and it can be used in a different industry, that's where the innovation comes in, right? And that's a lot of the stuff that I do, in my next life here. It's, even if I'm on a board or whatever, they leverage my expertise in automotive to, to make recommendations for their industry.
Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, just so you see, just quick, this is kind of like when I mentioned the AI control room. So, as an illustration, but we do gas leak, liquid, fire, smoke, gate guard, combustion, flare monitoring, tank level monitoring. We also
Yep.
do PPE detection. So, are they wearing their hard hat and their flame retardant, security, stuff like that. And so this guy looks here. And again, the whole point is remote monitoring and management of these facilities. So, yeah, if there were a scenario where they, wanted to look at similar stuff. And we're adding new computer vision models all the time, like frac pond monitoring, or, there was another one that came through where they want to monitor all the pumper trucks that show up. And so they, and look at because we can see the temperature differential and see when a tank's like it's filling up and then making sure it's empty, when they're during certain services and stuff like that.
Yeah, in my head, I'm just, the wheels are spinning.
Okay.
Look at the cost savings, look at the cost savings, look at the cost savings all across that operation, So oil and gas, and now I know why, when I fill up my tank, it keeps on getting cheaper and cheaper because I can see a lot of the work that you're doing is paying off at the gas pump.
Well, and that's the thing. While we are automate compliance, like we're EPA approved and all this stuff, really it's ops that buys us, and they are looking for all those things as a efficiency play. And so that's why they want to roll us out and, be able to, it's been their dream for years to be able to remotely monitor and manage all their facilities and stuff like that. So anyway.
Great.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a meet and greet. I didn't know this was going to be it.
Well, hey, what the hey?
I would have wore a better shirt. How about that?
Oh, well, it's cash, Anyway, like I said, send me your stuff, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. So,
all right, thanks.
All right, thanks. All right,
thanks again, Mark, and good luck.
All right, thanks. See ya. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
The Empirical Energy Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.